All right.
Okay, we're finally there. All right, everybody. We're finally here in the green room with John Connolly. Hey, John.
Hello.
Hey, the reason why we're a little late is because we were trying some things experimentally ahead of time, and it wasn't necessarily working out. And finally, I realized that, hey, we got to go live. So we have some information for you about live streaming, maybe, and we definitely will have some information for you about Pro Tools, because John Conley, who is my guest tonight, knows all about Pro Tools, and we'll get into that for a minute. But I've been trying to, and he knows this, I've been trying to come up with something I can try to embarrass him with, and I haven't been able to find anything other than this. And I'm going to pull this up because somebody out there may remember this. This could you see that yet, John? Do you remember the full motion band pictures?
I do.
Right. And now I've had Stefan on, I've had Jamie on. And there's you with your long hair.
I'm not seeing it. I don't see it. Probably a good thing.
Well, maybe is it not being shown yet? No, it should be there. Well, maybe not. Oh, there I am. Okay. I think people are seeing it.
Oh, man, I'm just, not seeing it.
Yeah, it's up.
I don't want to see it.
All right. Okay, so there's you, obviously, with the Michael Bolton hair. And then here's
there it is. I see it.
Yeah, okay. So and then here's another one. And you had your hair in a ponytail. But those take us back. I mean, that's about as embarrassing as I can get.
Thank
And
goodness.
I was able to download the video that we made one time with you doing the voiceover. But I'll spare the people on that. They can see that on YouTube. But a little bit of how John and I met is I started this band called Full Motion, and somebody said call John, and at the time you were playing at some bar in, what was that bar you were playing at? That was it
Fremont?
Fremont,
I think so.
and was Brian Carter. Wasn't Billy Johnson playing drums in that thing for a while?
Oh, that was there was a couple of, I was just picking up gigs here and there. Yeah.
And you were a musician. And I remember you came to my house when my this is funny because I remember Michaela and Cody were like 1 and 3, and you came to my house with your hair and a long sort of trench coat, and Carmel was with you. And the two of you stood knocking, and I remember my daughter, Michaela, like she was maybe 3 or 4. She opens the door and she goes, "Dad, there's some really strange people at the door."
Turned out she was right.
Right. Okay. So then we rehearsed in your place that you were living in San Mateo.
Right.
That I eventually moved into. So
I moved out of, and then you moved in.
As a matter of fact, I moved in before you moved out. and then you moved out and came to LA. So fill me in a little bit on, you were playing in my band, and were you, when we first started working, you were just a musician? Were you doing, when did you start at Digidesign?
Started Digidesign in 1995.
Wow, that's about the time we met.
Yeah, right around that time. Yeah,
And
old farts we are.
and well, I'm a little older than you, but so Digidesign, what were you doing? What were you doing there?
I was doing phone support for Sound Designer 2. That was their 2-channel little digital audio app, and Pro Tools and Master List CD and all those different Digidesign products. Um, Phone support. So if you called in to Digidesign from anywhere between 1995 and 1999, we may have spoken.
Eh, so you Digidesign, what, when they first started, what was it they did? That was it an interview? Weren't they the first uh, digital music platform?
They were not the first, but they kind of made it accessible for a lot of people. So they started out. There was 2 guys from Burlingame, right? So it's a Bay Area thing. Burlingame High School musicians. They started making their own drum sounds for. I want to say the Drumulator. It was a drum machine.
Was it lit? Did not, was it Drumulator or the Emu or
I
Ring
can't
Drum?
remember. It was one of those drum machines at the time, and they weren't happy with the stock sounds. So they basically created their own chip that you could buy and modify your drum machine with these new sounds that they were programming. So they were recording different musicians, and it was mainly drum hits, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you would buy these chips to kind of hot rod your drum machine, and it took off for them. So they started, building that. And then they added software to it so that you could record your own samples and trigger your own samples with some of these, kind of later generation drum machines and stuff. So, an editor of sorts that was built around the Mac. It was a mono or stereo 2-channel editor, and it kind of spiraled from there.
And it was just drum sounds to start with, is
To
basically.
start, then they got into like synthesis, right? So you could create your own little, basic synthesis application on the Mac, and you could create your own sounds and record them and load them up on your machine. Your samplers, a sample editor, basically
Yeah, yeah.
for sampling keyboards. That was big at that time, early '90s.
So
Sampling was just getting going.
when did they when did they start? What was their launch date? Do you remember? Was that late 80s?
I think it was late '80s.
Wow, man, that's good. You remember Syndrums and all that? You had a set of Syndrums.
Yeah, I did
Simmons.
actually. Yeah,
Simmons.
yeah, yeah. I did.
Oh.
They were fun. They were really hard on your elbows and stuff, though. They kind of gave you like a fatigue, but yeah, but that was fun. Um, yeah, that was early days of sampling and digital audio and all that. And then, they had their 2-track editor, and then they pumped it up to 4 channels of audio, and then 8 channels and so on. When I started, it was Pro Tools version 2.8.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was like a 16-track system, or maybe 32 at the time. You think you
Yeah.
could bump it up, and it was not stable. It was just starting to catch on.
So you did full motion for like 4 years, 95, 6, 7, 8, something like that, 90 up to 99. And the day you moved out was like January 1st of 99 or 299, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah. And so you were just playing kind of in my band and doing uh Digidesign, and they were really growing fast in those days, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 99, things started to really ramp up. 98, 99 for Pro Tools. It was starting to be adopted as the multi-track, and people were stepping away from tape, and it was really beginning at that point. Yeah. Starting
So
to ramp up.
now, when did you start playing guitar? Was that something you always wanted to do?
Where's Jamie? He could argue I never started. Jamie, I know you're there. I'm going to cut you off at the pass.
All right. Uh, but you were playing guitar for a number of years. I mean, you were.
Yeah, no, I was, guitar player for a long time, but in the local club scene up there, and
Yeah.
a little bit of vocals. And I used to do a little bit of live sound as well. And
I think I inherited some of your gear.
right, I did. I think you did. When I moved down here to LA, I kind of um, got rid of a bunch of stuff.
I think when you moved out of your place in San Mateo and you moved down to Los Angeles, you took whatever you needed and left everything else in the place I moved into.
Right. You moved into a furnished a studio apartment, or
Right.
not studio apartment, studio.
It's studio. And
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, I still have a few items laying around that have your name on them.
Right. Yeah. I want them back. I want it back. No, I'm kidding.
Oh man, that was like 21 years ago now.
Long
Um,
time.
so you moved to LA to be the Pro Tools rep of the West Coast of Los Angeles. What? How did?
Well, it started out as LA. So geographically, this territory for Digidesign, I was part of sales team, was the smallest physically, but the largest in terms of number of systems and revenue and all that, because it's such a concentrated area here in LA of studios. So product specialist was my title, and we did the clinics at all the local music stores and demos. I was demoing Pro Tools and a lot of support and you name it, installations. It was great because I got the whole gamut, from bedroom studios, singer songwriter doing a super small studio, all the way to the largest studios for TV and film and music, and everything in between, all kinds of different Pro Tools systems.
So Pro Tools, if I'm not mistaken, was the first application that people could begin to do in their home and for computers. It was sort of the start of the bedroom in your home studio. Would you agree with that?
Um, well, it started out on a higher end thing, but yeah. So I think prior to Pro Tools, there was a bunch of other things kind of floating around out there, Synclavier and Fairlight and all these other systems, but they were huge price tags. It was tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into these systems. So Digidesign was not the first into that game, but they brought the price point way down initially. But even then, it was still high, 30, 40 grand to get into a Pro Tools rig. And then later on, like 99, they came out with the 001, and that really brought the price point down and made it accessible to a lot of people. There was other applications that people are still using now, Logic and Cubase. Those were predominantly MIDI only. So you would do MIDI in those applications, Studio Vision and Digital Performer, and then you would synchronize them with Pro Tools and do the audio in Pro Tools. And that was kind of a cumbersome start to that. But yeah, Digidesign kind of made it available to a much larger audience by bringing the price down.
So their first systems, though, you were saying they were mostly high end. And who, when you moved to LA, and this is the stuff that fascinates me because I was starstruck, and you used to do this to me all the time. You
I
call
knew
me
you loved it.
up, hey Jeff, guess where I am? Like, oh boy, here it comes. I'm at Steve Vai's house. Hey Jeff, guess where I am? I'm at Stevie Wonder's house. I'm like, dude.
Yeah.
but the people that were buying the Digidesign systems, the Pro Tools rigs in those days were pretty much the bigger name people that needed tech support. And not only did your job then was to go to their homes and troubleshoot and help them learn and educate them on how to use the software and the hardware, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the first part was to figure out what kind of a system did they need. You know, how many inputs and outputs, what kind of horsepower, and mic pre's or not, and spec it out, and then go in and help install it and get them up to speed, getting them into get them over the initial learning curve.
And you got a little bit of sales. That didn't you do sales for that was part of it? You could sell
I
it.
was part of the sales team, but I was the technical side of the sales team.
I
So I
see.
didn't actually deal with pricing and the exchange of money, but I would help from the technical standpoint of
Right.
sales support.
So then as it grew, so I'm just kind of getting some laying some groundwork for the depth of your knowledge. So
It's going to be a short conversation.
as it grew though, because you started so early and sort of watched it develop and learned the Pro Tools and how it's developed over the years. I think at one point you gave me a book and said, here, there's how many shortcuts, 900 shortcuts or something
Oh
stupid.
yeah,
And but what the interesting thing because of your length with them and your knowledge of learning from the ground up, so to speak, you might have more of a knowledge of what those all of those shortcuts are than the average guy. So
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, answering phone calls, support calls for 8 hours a day, you learn an application pretty intimately that way because you never know what the call is going to come in. And it took about a good year and a half of phone calls every day to kind of get a grip over the application so that you're resolving it and not researching everything. But yeah, and there was a time where I used to study the shortcuts and try to really be on top of them. I'm not so much that way now. I have the shortcuts that I use on a regular basis. I have my own top 10 keyboard shortcut doc too. I should put that up. I don't know how to send you a doc here, but I
uh,
can do that. It's my
can
own top 10 Pro Tools keyboard shortcuts that everybody should know.
that and uh, and then I'm going to jump for a second into Digidesign, then grew and they become sort of this industry standard in Los Angeles for recording studios, and you
Right.
spent a lot of time at Sony,
Yeah.
and it grew and grew and grew, and then Avid, that was at the time a video editing system,
Right.
bought Digidesign and Pro Tools, right?
They actually purchased Digidesign in 95 before I started, but they were separate, run separately. Digidesign was its own thing. Avid was its own thing, but Avid was the parent company. But in 2008, 2009, that changed. So it appears to everybody that Avid purchased Digidesign in 2008, 2009. But yeah,
But Avid had already bought them.
right. Yeah.
Okay. So uh, now when all of the Pro Tools systems and stuff comes up, um, what for somebody that doesn't know what Pro Tools is, uh, a novice person that might be listening that's just a beginner, uh, what how would you tell them, describe what it is that Pro Tools does?
Well, Pro Tools is a software and hardware digital audio workstation that you can use to record, edit, mix audio for whatever reason you may need to do that. We have a huge number of voiceover talent, singer songwriters. If you want to record and edit and mix your own songs, it's great for bands as well. Multi-tracking. It's um, the standard for TV and film post production. So probably, I don't know, 98, I don't know what the percentage is of all TV and film you watch is been done in Pro Tools in terms of audio editing and mixing. So Avid makes the Pro Tools software. They make Pro Tools hardware, which is audio interfaces that allow you to get your audio in and out of the computer. And they also make control surfaces, which are basically big mixers, so that you can control that software from a familiar, mixing console piece of hardware. And that's you know We have small system. They have small systems like that, hardware control surfaces all the way up to huge ones. So everything is really scalable. So you can get into Pro Tools for really little money, or you can go big.
Well, and right now, and then I'm going to tell a couple of things that you did for live tech support. But right now, I have a MacBook Pro, and have a subscription to Pro Tools just so I can edit wave files and stuff. And
Right.
I could, if I wanted to, I could bring in a keyboard and record some things. I do have
Right.
a couple of live audio rigs that would be able to record into Pro Tools, but the subscription is, I think, $24 a month, and I got it. It just gives me all of the options in Pro Tools. But if you wanted a bigger studio, and this is a couple of things that I know you've done while you were still working at Avid, is the tech support you did for the Olympics, and you got, where
Yeah.
was it that you got to sit? Your whole job was just to sit, because what kind of audio recording were they doing for the Olympics? What was that?
I was there with NBC Olympics. It was actually an Avid support thing, and I was in basically it was a voiceover booth. So Bob Costas and some of the on-air talent. Oh God, what's the other guy's name? And he's drawn a. He does all the boxing. HBO boxing. He's a big sports announcer, and I can't remember his name. But NBC had 4 or 5, main on-air talent that they would come in and they would do these voiceovers, and they would do like a player profiles. A particular athlete. They would do a promo, or not a promo, but a special on them. They had a full-on video editing team there of probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 people video editing. And then those projects would be pushed into the Pro Tools room and mixed. Voiceovers recorded the closing ceremonies was all edited and mixed there. And I can remember as the first hour was actually broadcasting of the closing ceremonies, they hadn't finished editing the second hour, and they were jamming to get that done while it's live. So it was like a show that was on air that hadn't been finished yet. So a little bit of pressure.
Yeah. So your job was, in case something happened, you needed to be able to be there, troubleshoot it, and fix it like instantly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other big gig that I thought was cool. So what some people may not know is every touring band today, because everything is digital, all the digital mixing boards, they generally take a Pro Tools rig with them and record their sound checks and record their shows and record rehearsals. And they use what's called a virtual sound check, where they'll do a sound check and play everything, record it, and then the next day they will run the recording to do a sound check. And
That's right.
you got to do I've never been a fan of the band Bono.
You too. Yeah.
So describe you, because this is unbelievable to me. The last tour you two did. Now, there's how many guys in the band? 4 guys.
4 guys. 4-piece band.
And each guy has their own monitor mixer.
That's true.
And Pro Tools recording.
Yeah. The U2 live show, I think, has 5 or 6 192 input Pro Tools rigs.
Jesus.
They're recording 192 tracks times 5 or 6 rigs. And I still to this day cannot figure out what they're recording in those. But yeah, they have 6 rigs. They were here in town at Forum. They were having some Pro Tools problems. So this is all through our mutual friend, Greg Price, Diablo Digital. He calls up and said, hey, let's go down there. I took my son with me and we walked into the Forum. And this was earlier in the day. So the stage and everything was all set up. The band was not there, but we walked in and my son, he was probably 10 at the time, 11. Wow, this is awesome. Who's U2? So it was an impressive stage setup, but he had no idea who U2 was. So yeah, I just did the Queen show when they were here in town. And then of course there's a lot of acts that rehearse here in LA too. So oftentimes go tweak their Pro Tools rigs when they're rehearsing here as well. Different touring acts.
Yeah, you introduced me to Greg Price when he was out there rehearsing with Ozzy Osbourne at the Third Encore,
Right.
And a lot of people rehearse there and get their shows ready. Um, the one time, and I got to tell this story because you hooked me up with this too, and Brian, when you were doing a webinar with Robert Scoville, and the guy they were interviewing was I forget his name. I always forget his name. Paul Allen Hager, I believe.
Wow.
I believe that's who it was, and he was Miley Cyrus's and Goo Goo Dolls front of house guy. I
Okay.
believe so. So I was sitting in between him. You were off talking to Brian. I was sitting between Robert and him, and we were just talking. And I'm not making this up. Robert's phone rings, and he goes, "Oh, hello, yeah, yeah, no, I'm busy. Hey Paul, could you go do Paul McCartney for a week? Could you go do that gig? No, I'm sorry. I'm with the Goo Goo Dolls in Hawaii. Maybe you should call." And I'm sitting there between them, and I'm like, holy shit. I mean, Paul McCartney was just calling them like, hey, can you come out and do sound front of house for me? And so my question to them was, and they were being kind, but I said, how many people at your level are there in the world? And they said, oh, there's probably about 100. And then I said, no, no, really. There's got to be a really short list of who you would say, call this guy and refer to Paul McCartney. And then they go, yeah, there's maybe 12 or 15 guys. But those are the kinds of guys that and work with all the time based on your Pro Tools thing.
Yeah, I'm not so heavy in the live sound realm. I mean, I know Robert Scoville because he's an avid employee and was largely involved with the S6 development. But and he worked with Tom Petty and many others for many years. But and then Greg Price and a couple others. But I'm not huge in the live sound thing as much as I'm busy in the studio and post production, TV and film side.
So
Too much pressure on live audio,
you
live
know,
sound.
it really is. It can be a beast. But
Yeah,
the thing is, when you're a front of house guy for those live shows, there's other people that do almost everything for you before you get there.
on the bigger shows, you mean?
On the bigger
Yeah,
shows,
yeah,
there's somebody comes in and tunes the system, and they run smart and kind of get everything tweaked and tuned, and
right.
everybody sets it up, and then you come in with your show file and you just plug it in, and it lays everything out on the mixing board, and then you've got
And you're done. Simple as that.
it's pretty simple. And once it really is at that level, it's way easier than on the stupid gigs I do, where you
Where
carry.
you do it all. Yeah.
So I'm going to put up my phone number though, in case there's somebody that has questions for you. And
This is a setup, Jeff. I can feel it.
well,
Jamie, you're out there.
wait. So I'm going to. I know this shouldn't be R-rated, but I got to tell this story about Jamie. And this would actually be cool if I would have been smart enough to set you up and have a prank phone call. But I wasn't that smart to think about that. But um, I met this lady in Boston her job was 976. Like, she would answer the phone
Oh, uh-huh.
and she would do those sexy voices with people. So I said, could you do me a buddy, a favor? Can I have you call? I'm going to call you at some point, and I'm going to have you talk to my friend Jamie.
Oh no.
So we were on a gig, and I called her up and said, okay, I'm going to pass the phone to my friend Jamie. And if you could have seen the expression on Jamie's face when I handed him the phone, it was priceless. Now, I would like to be able to do something like that, but I wasn't to you, but I'm not that creative. So
Plus my mom's watching, right?
yeah, your mom's watching.
More importantly.
I think she is, at least. And I know I'm surprised that Seth hasn't chimed in here, but so I believe Seth and your mom are watching. Um, so I'm trying to think of a Pro Tools question. Does anybody have any Pro Tools questions? But this is one thing that we were talking about with live streaming. When trying to get good audio on live streams, and you and I have done a Tuesday night tech thing about this, and I finally got the application that, oh, here's a caller, and I'm going to take this call, and give me a second. Okay. Hello, Reed.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Do you have a question for John?
I do. So, John, back in approximately '84, and this doesn't project that I'm doing a long story. Back in '84, I had a Macintosh 512K enhanced with a 1 meg upgraded, and I had that tape striped with an opcode, right? With
Yeah.
a code time machine.
Right.
To a 1-inch 16-track Otari. So that's how I started with Mark of the Unicorn MIDI sync to tape.
Yeah.
Anyway, fast forward to April 1st, I just bought my first Pro Tools rig so that I can shelter in. And I've got a Scarlett 4i4.
Nice.
My brief question is, when I record a new MIDI track, why am I still hearing the old MIDI track that I record over? I have checked all the options in the transport for the record button.
So you're saying if you record MIDI, a MIDI pass on a MIDI or an instrument track, and then you do another pass over the top, it's merging the MIDI on top of the existing MIDI. It's not replacing it.
Correct, sir.
Yeah. So let me see if I can show you my screen. There's a MIDI merge button. Let me try if I can. Let's go there.
And I've got my Pro Tools up now, and I've just noticed for some reason the green room stopped playing.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I can hear you.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me get out of my
Well, we were able to see the Pro Tools there for a minute.
you were? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I'll rather than click over, I'll explain it to you. But let me add this too. So tomorrow, Wednesday.
I've got you on screen again, by the way. I've got you on screen again.
Okay, he's got the screen back up. Can you put that image back?
Okay. All right. So can you see my Pro Tools window, edit window?
Mm-hmm.
In the upper right corner of the edit window, there is a small menu. It's called the edit window view selector, and you can show or hide different aspects of the tools and all that at the top. There's one section that if it's not visible, you want to check it so that it is, and that's the MIDI controls, right? The MIDI controls are right there. I don't know if you can see me turning them on and off. In the MIDI controls, there is a button that's two arrows that are kind of crashing into each other. That's MIDI merge. Let me turn this off. And if that button is lit as it is right now, it's blue. That means that MIDI that you record will remain even on the subsequent passes that you make. So you can. It's great for doing like a drum pattern where one pass of 4-bar loop, you could put a kick drum in, and then the next loop around you add hi-hats, and then the next one you add your snare drum, and they all accumulate the MIDI rather than
in effect overdubbing.
Right, exactly. So if you turn that off, that little blue button, I think it will do what you're looking for. Also, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday.
Is that the MIDI controls checkbox?
I'm sorry?
Is that the MIDI controls checkbox?
The MIDI controls section has the MIDI merge button. The MIDI merge button is the two arrows that collide into each other next to the conductor. The conductor is the little dude. Someone explained him as the guy standing in the pool.
To the left of the conductor. I see it now.
Yeah. MIDI merge. So if that's blue, you're going to accumulate MIDI. If you turn that off, it will overwrite.
Gotcha. Oh, I see. MIDI controls allows you to see those in the transport.
Right. And they're not by default visible all the time.
Right. Got it.
So tomorrow, Wednesday, at 6 p.m. and Friday at 6 p.m. I'm doing free Pro Tools classes via Zoom. So if you want to join in, it's just going to cost you your time. That's it. And I'll send out the link to Jeff. I don't know how you can get that. I guess we could post it. Oh, I'm going to be posting it on my Instagram account. I'm going into social media whether I like it or not. Damn it.
Do you invite via email?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll email you.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Reed, you should have John's email up. I'll put John's email back up. So you should.
Yeah, I saw that, and I've already put him in it. I've already put him in my phone, and
okay, good.
That's not to threaten him or warn him of my of my.
Yeah, send me an email, john@protoolservices.com. Anybody who wants to participate. So john@protoolservices.com. Hit me with an email. I'll send you an invite to both of these sessions, Wednesday and Friday. They're free.
Sounds great. I used to deal with computers and music in San Francisco when I was doing marketing.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. But you're new to Pro Tools.
Yeah, I mean, I've used it a little bit in friends' studios. I've gone in and engineered just a little bit,
right.
You know, filled in for somebody, and relatively familiar with it in the periphery of having done sessions. But yeah, I'm getting around on it nicely.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any other questions?
I used to deal with computers and music in San Francisco when I was doing marketing.
Okay. Yeah. I remember them. My memory of the Bay Area is fading. I hate to say it in terms of street names and stores and all that, but yeah, I remember computers and music. Yeah.
So, hey, John.
No Paul De Benedictis from Opcode days.
I definitely recognize the name. I was not a close friend, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, enough for name dropping. I'll get off the line. Thanks a lot.
Cool. Send me an email. I'll reply back.
All right. Thanks, Reed.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. All right. So, John, you can put your face back, but I want you to know, John, that we have woken up Mr. Brewer.
Oh no.
Yeah, and Stefan Kuhn is there and Jeffrey Walls, but the guy that we is actually tuned in now is Jamie. I'm sorry.
Big Lake guy.
Big Lake, and he. Well, and this is what he sent. I'm putting this over the top. It says, you should be able to see this, but I posted this. Everyone's killing me. And, you know, I mean, it's good that we still can have that effect on him.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if there's anyone else out there that has any more Pro Tools questions, you know, because the thing is, sitting here right now, I can't come up with any Pro Tools questions. My Pro Tools questions always come like when I'm in the middle of a gig, and I would call you and go, John, help me. I think.
No, this is the Jeff News call. It's 2 minutes before his gig starts. I just upgraded my OS on my computer, and Pro Tools doesn't work. I'm like, yes, Jeff, that's correct. You don't upgrade your OS. Well, I don't know. So in terms of Pro Tools, if you're not a Pro Tools user, there's a lot of resources out there, YouTube being one. And I think some people are intimidated, but my analogy for Pro Tools is it's like, you know, a guitar or whatever your instrument is. If you learn 3 chords and you play them with, you know, sincerity, you can get great results, and you can play a lot of songs with 3 chords. Pro Tools is kind of that way. You don't have to be an expert audio engineer, editor, mixer to get great results out of it. You can use it in a very basic way, and you'd be surprised a lot of the, you know, people that are doing big projects are basic users. So jump in and do it. There's a free version too, Pro Tools First, that you can get into. And then of course there's the 2 different paid versions, but if you want to get your feet wet, you can get into Pro Tools First.
Well, the thing that I I don't use GarageBand or any of those other applications. I've started using Ableton, and I can do simple recording in Ableton and use it as a interface with my M Audio workstation. Um, but whenever I need to do any really heavy editing and make things really record quality for a corporate show, I could not do it without Pro Tools. I
Yeah.
absolutely need Pro Tools because of the plugins and all of the different kinds of compression and editing and reverbs and things that you can do with Pro Tools. It's just way more powerful than anything Ableton or any of the others can offer. And uh, this is another thing that I've said a few times. The last time I really was heavy needing Pro Tools is I had a gig in Orlando, and I got a call like an hour before I was getting on the plane to go there that they needed a new song. So I called up all my buddies, record this track, and send me a template. And I sent it out to everybody. And when I landed, everybody had sent me their email, and I pulled my laptop up and I edited the song and made it uh, a file that could be played on a corporate show. I wouldn't. I suppose you can do that in Ableton. I know some guys that are really Ableton whizzes, and there's a time and place. I ended up putting it in Ableton and using a device to trigger the tracks through
Right.
Ableton, but I had to do all the heavy editing in Pro Tools because that's just what I know. And I don't know if I'm accurate in saying this, but to me, Pro Tools is the way that you really get all the heavy lifting done if you need to.
Yeah, audio editing and mixing, and I think people compare all these applications, and I think one of the differences is Pro Tools is aimed at audio recording, editing and mixing audio. Logic, for example, well, Pro Tools is from an audio engineer standpoint, mostly, not exclusively. Logic, for example, is coming more from a composer standpoint, so it's suited very well for composition. And I think Cubase leans towards that direction as well. Whereas Pro Tools is aimed at the audio engineer first and foremost. And of course, they all overlap with their features and functionality. But audio editing is what Pro Tools started with. That was it's been doing that the longest, and then of course mixing. So any of the apps they're all great and powerful these days. With the power of the computers the way they are, you can get a lot done with any of the applications. But and people say, well, why should I use Pro Tools? Um, you don't have to. There's a lot of options, but if you want to make a living doing audio, you're going to need to use, especially here in LA, you're going to need to use. You're going to need to. You'll be crossing paths with Pro Tools sooner or later, especially if it's in the TV or the film realm. Those other applications exist in composition and songwriting and all that in TV and film as well, but Pro Tools is predominant for sure.
In the larger mixing and post, do they predominantly use Pro Tools in post, especially?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So
definitely.
see, all of that is nothing I really know anything about, and to a point where I can't even ask. I don't even know the questions to ask in order to get some extract information out of you about all of this stuff. It would be really cool if somebody else had some questions, especially especially around film scoring. I had your friend and mine, Gary Lux, and he
Uh-huh.
talked about film scoring and film mixing and editing, but he doesn't do a lot of post work. What's the difference between like recording a live gig on Pro Tools and then just having the raw wave tracks and then mixing them and sending them to post and all of that stuff? What are those different aspects that you use Pro Tools for? Is that a good question?
Yeah. So I think from a film scoring standpoint, you're composing the music for a TV show or a film or whatever the case may be, and you're predominantly in the music side of things, you have video playing back in Pro Tools so that you can see the cues that you write, that they're relevant and in time and all that. You're composing to picture. Um, and a composer and or audio engineer will usually do that portion of it in their own kind of music environment, and then they'll submit those mixed down um, music cues in stereo or 5.1 or whatever to a mixer that's actually going to mix the show. And that mixer or mixers will take all of the different elements, the music that just came from the composer, but also all the dialogue that came from a dialogue editor, and then the sound effects, all the Foley stuff, and any footsteps or whatever noise you see that most people don't even pay attention to. It might be a restaurant scene and there's dishes and whatever silverware clunking around. Those sounds are all generated from scratch, from audio that's recorded specifically for that show. It's not often the actual audio recorded on the set. So there's a Foley artist who makes that sound in cue while they're watching the video. That's edited, handed off to the mixer along with those music cues. And then there's other sound effects, room tones, street noise, all those things are all edited by individuals and then contributed to the final project. And the mixer or mixers puts that all together. So all of that is largely done in Pro Tools. The composition of the music, oftentimes you'll have a composer using Logic or Cubase or another app that's aimed at composing, and they'll typically pair that up with a Pro Tools rig often, and record the Cubase and Logic into Pro Tools, and they'll mix in Pro Tools because that's its forte.
So,
oftentimes.
So the class that you're teaching in Berkeley, for Berkeley, the online course, is that beginning Pro Tools? What are the levels? I mean, because I know Pro Tools can get deep, but where do you start?
Yeah, so I teach the Pro Tools 110 class. So there's a Pro Tools 101 book that is available publicly. You can buy it on Amazon. I think it's like 35 or 40 bucks. It's the Pro Tools 101. It's an introduction to Pro Tools, and anybody can buy that. The follow-up to that book is the 110, and technically you're only supposed to be able to get that through an avid learning partner who's been certified to teach Pro Tools, and that 110 course. So it's kind of a follow-up to the intro. It digs in a little bit deeper than the intro book. And then there's the 200 level for Pro Tools, and then there's the 300 level, expert level of Pro Tools books too. And all those are available only through, avid learning partners, schools that have signed on to be official Pro Tools learning places. And that could be, colleges, universities, some high schools. High schools are typically doing the 101 and 110. But Musicians Institute, Berklee College of Music, all those are different avid learning partners where you can get a higher. And then there's specific schools locally too, like trade schools that will teach those courses as well.
Is there what trades other than MI? What trade school is there in Los Angeles that teaches this?
Well, there's a school in Santa Monica, Chilitos Audiograph International, and he teaches all of the Pro Tools levels. He's kind of a internationally known Pro Tools instructor out of Santa Monica, Audiograph International. Moviola doesn't do too many Pro Tools classes anymore. They used to. There's another school. It used to be Video Symphony. They're gone. But there's a couple smaller places, but Audiograph International is kind of the main one around here that is, basically audio specific school education. Whereas, universities and colleges, of course, it's one of a gazillion courses or programs they offer.
So most of that kind of learning is going to be for somebody who wants to be a recording engineer and actually do that as a career. I don't know why they'd want to do that, but I
Well,
mean,
they want to do that. Well, yeah. So there's certifications that you can get through each of those levels. And the ongoing question is do the certifications, are they worth it? And unlike something like a Cisco, where you're learning networking at a very deep level or a very high level, and having a Cisco certification can make or break you getting a particular job. The certifications for the Pro Tools are not that way. It's not going to, land you a gig. But I think if you were, going for a gig and it was neck and neck between two people, all things equal, and you had the certification and the other person didn't, it might give you an edge. But more importantly, the Pro Tools education that you get through those books is a well-rounded education of Pro Tools. Most people use a small fraction of the Pro Tools feature set, 10%, maybe to 25%, and that's all they need, and they get really good at that. And that's fine and great for many people. For some people who need more than that, those classes are good because it covers the entire feature set, everything. So it's a well-rounded, more in-depth
right.
education.
Well, for me, for example, that what I use Pro Tools for would be most of the people that are signed on here, the musicians that I know might sit with them, and I've got them, they might be watching, where I just need to edit a song quick. I need to cut an ending off, or I need to,
Right.
uh, mix a couple of things and set levels and things like that. That the depth of knowledge I need is that it's limited, and I can't go really fast. So if someone came to me and said, "Hey, I really want you to mix my album," I don't want to do that, because my knowledge wouldn't be quick. I'd be slow, and I just don't have enough
Right.
experience. But
Yeah.
for the little things that I have to do, like Jamie, bass player, wants to record his bass, get a drum guy in there, and vocals, little things you can do and have time, and it's good to use, and it's powerful. But I wouldn't be able to, you know, sell myself as any kind of audio, you know,
Mixer
a mixer on a
engineer. Yeah. Yeah. No, well, and some of the training I do is this structured course, but a lot of it, probably most of it, is not. It's someone trying to do whatever project they're in, whether it's music or voiceover or audio books or whatever, and they have a laundry list of things that they need to be able to do, or they need to be able to do it quicker than they're currently doing it. So we'll just go through and kind of, okay, what is it that you want? What is it that you're trying to do? What are you trying to get out of your projects here? And we'll just pick it apart and then go through that list. So that's more of a like custom training, and I do more of that than the structured training.
Can I share your Steve Perry story?
I
Well,
don't know. Which one is that?
well, just that you got to sit with him. He called you
Oh,
and said that, "Hey, I'm going to do a new record. I want to do a new album, and I've got tapes and tapes and tapes of old original songs that I want to go through." And you spent, I don't know how many months with him, going through all of his music and putting them into Pro Tools and editing and going through those. That's a project like you're talking about, something like that.
yeah, that was a little larger one. He had probably 10 or 12 hard drives, little mobile hard drives. He had a little mobile Pro Tools rig on his laptop, an old M box that he had for years, and he calls them sketches. He would get us an idea for a song, and it could be just a vocal line that he's recorded, or it actually might have been even a fully developed, song, and he had put strings and drums and guitars and all that stuff in there, and they were varying degrees of completion. And then he would back them up to another drive, so there was like 4 copies of every song, and it was scattered over a bunch of drives. So we went through and just kind of went through them all and cleaned them all up and said, okay, here's 4 versions of this song, here's the latest version, and we'll move it over here and into the keeper pile and get rid of the 3 copies and end up just boil it all down. File management, was the issue
Mhm.
there. But it was fun going through all these different songs,
Right. So,
Steve Perry songs.
uh, uh, before we get close to wrapping it up, did I mention about the issue I was having with the music? Have we talked about that yet over on this particular platform, being Switcher Studio, where uh, uh, the the platform is made to process voice only, and anything below 85 hertz or 180 hertz is recognized as ambient noise, and that this platform squashes the music, so it's really hard to get live music to play through this particular platform. And Zoom does that too, but you said you found something, a way to get past that in Zoom, and we were also talking about trying to find a way to get past that in Switcher Studio. And that's been a subject of conversation between us for a while, because a lot of musicians, they can get live sound from their own studio, but they want to collaborate. And I think that we've been looking for something. It'd be nice if there was a way to route something through Pro Tools. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, there is a way to route uncompressed, and we talked about this before. There's a couple of different types of compression. One is compression for audio levels, but then the other compression is actually making the file size smaller so that it, can more easily stream over the internet, or MP3 is a perfect example. That's a compression that's been applied to a wave file to make it smaller so it's easier to email. But there's a way to do that within Pro Tools, and there's, Source Connect has been one thing, but it's more like, point to point, where I want to have you sing on my project. You open up Pro Tools on your end and I have it on my end. And this is kind of an audio bus, effectively, from your system to my system. And it's actually really good quality. But from a real time standpoint of more than two people, I don't know that that's, you can't really do it more than that inside Pro Tools. There's another one I just learned of recently that's kind of the same concept as Source Connect. It's called Audio Movers, and apparently it's, very low latency, as much as you can be. But like we talked about, the issue is there's so many variables between you and I, just within my own home internet and your home internet, not to mention all of the stops that it makes once it leaves my house to yours. So,
Right.
so I don't know that there's, there's got to be something out there that will do it with low latency and a decent quality. And I think we're at the point now where.
And here's the thing that I'm wondering, though, is if you were able to use Audio Movers, which is one platform sending just the audio, and you have Switcher Studio using the video, linking the audio and video together, then you'll need something to do that and make sure that it's not out of sync.
Yeah,
that's an issue.
That would be tough, I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, worth trying. Since we started having this conversation, I've been looking into it, and we do different streaming methods. My day gig is at a radio station, and all of the on-air talent are working from home now, so we had to set them up, and there's latency there. The quality is decent, but it's a latent thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a real-time people playing together, but it's a conversation. And it's just like when you watch the, TV news or any TV nowadays, you've got somebody at home, you can tell that the latency is there.
Right.
Yeah, so latency is the issue, and then the compression and how do you get the audio over there in a quality way. And what you said earlier, I think, and we talked about that too, is it's optimized for voice, which is a narrow frequency range. And there's a lot of gain reduction and ACG, automatic gain control, AGC, automatic gain control, where they are gaining things up and down so that it sounds level, as good as it can, which doesn't do good for music. But
yeah, it's always great for voices. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up doing more of talking and then just playing an MP3 rather than have a musician play something.
Right.
So well, John, we're right at an hour.
Wow, that was an hour already, huh?
I know, right? I don't, I don't know if I asked enough of the right questions to extract knowledge out of you, other than it's always fun to know that we bugged Jamie a little bit.
Oh, anytime we can harass Jamie is time well spent.
It is, right?
I don't think anybody would argue that.
No, anybody that knows Jamie, would say they would understand why it would be kind of cool to get under his skin a little bit.
Yeah. And it's not really hard either.
No. Oh, that's I might want to do this, play this only because it's something that I can show of you playing, and unfortunately, it's my old band video.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to see that. But let me plug my
Do that. Okay.
my website, Pro Tools Services. You can actually schedule a support call right from my website. And I just got my Instagram going, Pro Tools Services as well. I'm going to be posting my dates for my Pro Tools free training sessions, or you can hit me with an email at john@protoolservices.com. And yeah, if you have Pro Tools questions, I likely can help with that.
More than likely, you're always the first guy I call, and you always go like,
as the gig starts.
Right. How soon do you need this, Jeff? Like now. Oh man. All right, John. Well, I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to wrap it up in my usual way with my my Roger Smith song, and you can hang on and we'll chat a little bit after.
Okay, cool. Thanks for having me.
All right, here we go.